Welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and we are back in the studio, and we are very happy about being here with a real live guest. So thank you for joining us today. Today, my guest is Johnny Swing. Johnny is a sculptor, an artist, a master metalsmith. He fuses these talents together, making dazzling and elegant creations that push boundaries, inspiring us to think and see more closely. They are a joy to behold, and you can feel his own maker's joy in each of them. Most renowned for his iconic coin furniture, Johnny's innovative work is in public and private collections around the world. And just recently, he was featured in the New York Times, a full page in the art section. Welcome, Johnny Swing.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks.
Yeah. We got a lot to talk about, but we'll start in with you were born in Connecticut.
I was.
Northwest corner? Yeah.
Sharon Hospital. Nice little hamlet.
Uh-huh.
It was a perfect place to 0 to 3.
Really? Yeah. And you grew up in the 60s, right?
9 of them.
9 of the 60s. And moving forward, yes?
Yep. I liked the 60s. There was a lot of things were happening. It seemed like a wonderful time. A lot of bad things happened, but people only seem to remind me of them. They seemed like interesting times.
They were very interesting times. And you, I would assume that you did a lot of exploring different kinds of things. What'd you get into when you were a kid?
I had a sandbox that I played in until I was 16, which sort of stunted my relationship issues. But my mother had a sewing machine. I was mentioning that to you earlier that I loved using her sewing machine. I played in the brook a lot, changing the direction of the stream and trying to fish. We used to do a lot of hand fishing. I rode a lot of motorcycles, when I was younger, and mostly they were broken, so I was either just making them more broken or occasionally getting them to work right and enjoying them.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I sort of ended up doing, in hindsight seemed creative, but now, but then just sort of seemed like maybe I was going down the wrong track and sort of a confused child. I'm sure many people had doubts as to whether there was something working right upstairs.
Yes, sometimes hindsight is not 20/20, right?
They were good times though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoyed most of my childhood.
Yeah, and you, like a lot of people growing up in the 50s, 60s, 70s even, spent a lot of time outside.
I spent most of my time outside.
Mm-hmm.
I did like television though. I cannot fall asleep to the television. Some people, you turn the TV on, they immediately go to sleep. I see a moving image and I'm just like a wild animal.
We had roots early in Vermont.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
We moved, my wife and I moved out of New York City in '95 when our first son was 6 weeks old,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up renting my grandmother's house in Brookline, Vermont. And 2 years later we bought it.
Wow.
So.
Wow. And so did you come to visit when you were a kid in Vermont?
I did, but I don't have much memories of that.
Yeah.
My father and I built a house further up from the house that we live in 1977.
Uh-huh.
He had kept some property when she passed away in '77, and we built a house there.
Uh-huh.
And it's a beautiful house. It's on a town road, but it has a view of Bromley, Stratton, Mount Snow, and Haystack.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's really nice. And you've been there since sometime in the 90s, right?
Right.
Yeah. And you went to Skidmore, you studied art, you went to Skowhegan and studied some more art. What were you focusing on during those years?
Making art. And I say that, it sounds like a sarcastic answer, but art is sort of sarcastic. Yeah. Art is like you're making something that's completely intellectual. Because that's sort of the definition of art. If it's not intellectual, it's craft. Not to get into that argument, but I'm really, to make things that are artistic is to sort of inspire somebody to see things differently or to think about other things. And, I was really focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me, back to now you're just a furniture maker. It's like, yes, but I make furniture where people can sit in them and have a really either a sensual experience or just a move to a different place where most people sit in my furniture and immediately are having some sort of transformative experience, which is very similar to art. So I've always been curious of where things go and what happens in your mind, and my mother was a painter, and she was a good artist and had a great eye.
Mm-hmm.
Her default was as an artist is that she always had stoppers to when she was going to work. And I said to myself at a really young age, well, that's one thing that'll never happen to me. And then it never has. I've, not, I could be broke or I could be in jail, one way or another. I mean, if you gave me an extra 20 minutes, I'd probably make something in the studio. Just, I don't know if, I was thinking the other day, I was thinking like, if you ask me the question, like, what do you miss most in life? I almost miss being bored. Because that's like the most productive time I can be is like bored. Then just like stuff just starts happening, and none of us are bored anymore. There's like I'm bored. I play with my phone.
Right.
It's like that. It's boredom. Boredom like arguments is basically going out the window thanks to our smartphone. But it is the root of my creativity. I mean, most of my solutions or problems are solved like when I'm falling asleep or waking up or in the middle of the night. My most productive times.
Middle of the night.
Intellectually.
Yeah.
I don't like. I'd rather be sleeping.
Right.
Sometimes the brain just.
Yes. Right. Were you at some point drawn more to industrial design than other things?
No, I was still not drawn to industrial design. I could give a shit about industrial design. I mean, I like things that are designed nicely. Like I follow a lot of pages on Instagram. I mean, I love cars. I love trains. I love boats. I love buildings. And I love vacuum cleaners. I love coffee makers. I mean, I love all that stuff. I have no inspiration necessarily. I mean, if somebody said, "Could you design a coffee maker?" I'd be like, so flattered. I'd give it a try. But it's not what I went to school for. It's not. I'm very shape oriented. And if I made a coffee maker, hopefully it'd work right. But it would. I think it'd look pretty. I mean, it's so funny. Like that now, like as an adult, I'm like, what do you do? I make really pretty things. That's like. That's a really good description. But I'm not sure that was my life goal. Like, if you asked me when I was 20 or 30, like, do you want to make pretty things for a living? I'd be like, not so much. Like, that's not really where I'm headed. But
at the same time, I saw a quote of yours that said that you were destined to be a sculptor. Is that out of context?
No. Destined. I mean, pre-qualified or lack of choices. I mean. When you're an art major in college, it's, I was a math major for a year and a half till they explained to me I couldn't really, I wasn't succeeding in that major. It took Calc 3 to beat that into my head. Art is a very peculiar profession. I would not suggest it to anyone. Yeah. I mean, and that sounds negative. It's so personal. It's so, the success rate is so small. Yeah. I'm very, very lucky to have sold anything, let alone a bunch of things.
Yes.
And to rely on luck, like that's that should not be a prerequisite to success. Like that luck is a large percentage of your success. Like try and choose a job where luck is like a low part of the
I would guess though, Johnny, that you're following things that you like to do though, right?
Yep. I love what I do.
Yeah.
I enjoy going to work. I enjoy making things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you started welding when you were really young.
Yep, I had a neighbor that welded, and I was immediately drawn to it. Welding's magical.
Well, yeah, let's talk about welding and metals and the work that you do with that.
So, really, welding is the only thing where you're taking two similar objects and making them one. It's not, say with wood, you take two similar types of wood and you attach them. They're still attached, either with that attachment mechanism, whether it's a screw, a nail, or glue. Mm-hmm. You're never making them one. I mean, I can put two pieces of metal together, weld them, grind that weld down, and there's, metallurgically, there might be some differences, but pretty much they're one piece of metal at that point.
Yeah.
The only similar thing is like if you broke your leg and the bones meld back together, that's about as close to welding as exists out there.
Yeah.
So, there's that magical aspect, that immediacy. There's also, I break things a lot. I broke things a lot as a kid, and welding is the only sort of thing where you can get involved in it. Like, if it breaks, you just weld it back together. And it's just, simple.
And it's the whole fire, right? The whole fire thing and the transformation of the elements.
I'm not afraid of fire. I'm like, my favorite line when people say, "Do you smoke?" And I'm like, only when I'm on fire. A lot of people say their stopper for learning to weld is that they're afraid of fire or afraid of getting burned, and that that's legitimate. It's like if you don't like bright lights and you don't like hot things and you don't like pain here and there, it's like it's not the job for you.
Right. One thing my personal experience. I remember when I first saw one of your pieces, and we're gonna be doing cutaways to show some of your pieces.
What the hell I do?
what the hell you do, right? And it was one of your big, you can't call it a couch, you can't call it a sofa, it's more than a bench, but it was one of your beautiful sculptural sitting pieces. And I remember seeing it from afar, and there was something glittery, and I was walking towards it, shiny, not glittery, and I was walking towards it, and the closer I got, the more I just like was in awe of it. Till finally I realized, oh my God, it's made out of coins, and there was such delight, you know, through each one of those steps until the final thing when you see, and then you sit in it.
Yeah.
You know, and it holds a human body. Your pieces hold human bodies in a very unique way.
Thank you. I mean, it's my intention. I mean, I sort of, people often, you know, say to me, are the chairs comfortable? I'm like, well, they wouldn't be very good chairs if they weren't. Like, why go to the effort to make what I make, which they take months?
Yes.
You know, and then to make something if it's uncomfortable. I'm not saying every part of the piece of furniture is comfortable, but often my effort is that there's one or two spots that really are sort of just like you can sit them and you're like,
Yes.
ah,
Yes.
you know,
And
your back is supported and you're in a place that you'd like to be.
And there's so much meticulous artistry that goes into them. And, you know, these are made out of coins. So one average size piece has how many coins and how many welds?
There's most average work is 6,000 to 8,000 coins, and there's an average of 5 welds per coin, so, you know, 35,000.
35,000. And you started out with pennies, which makes a lot of sense. And what was the pull? Was it the pennies? Was it the vision that you had for this? What was it that you drew you to start welding pennies together?
I mean, everything is always sort of a little bit of a desperate act. You know, what is my lottery ticket? What's a good idea? What's going to make sense? What is? It was early mid '90s in New York. I was really into rap music, and I just thought I'd make a chair out of pennies. I mean, it didn't sort of. I didn't process the idea far enough to go whether it was a good idea or a bad idea or how it was necessarily going to work. I was doing street sign sculptures at the time. Somebody I shared, we shared studios with, had welded a quarter to part of a work that he was working. I'm like, oh, you know, it just progressed. There was other people actually welding. Tom Sachs was welding coins together at that point, or soldering them. But I was using a lot of found objects at the time. The biggest problem with found objects is finding more of them. You really, you know, if you see something you like, you're like, oh, that'd be great to use. And then you're like, but I need a bunch of them. So
right.
It's really, and the cool thing about coming up with the idea of welding pennies together is like, there's really no shortage of pennies. And if there is, you just buy them. You know, it's not, you know, you could ask 10 people for their penny collection, and one of those 10 people has got a big one.
That's right. Yeah.
So I cast this chair that I liked the shape of, and it was this designer, Harry Bertoya. And he actually makes sculptures also, which was sort of fun, you know, and now that I've learned much more about him. And I sort of thought, like rap music, that I was sort of collaborating with another artist, and you know, that seemed fun to me.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a way to sort of enter that world. And I cast the chair. In the negative, I made the shelf for the pennies. All the welds are on the back side, and then I built these legs on it, and really quite a beautiful object. Gotten a lot of nice attention over the years. And when people were looking at it, they're like, oh, that, you know, reminds me of the, you know, Bertoya diamond chair. I'm like, well, that's understandable. It's cast from that. And you know, it kept sort of going down that line to where it seemed more like people were saying to me, like, you know, don't you have your own ideas? Was sort of the insinuation. I was like, and I got tired of answering the questions about Harry Bertoya and why was I using his design. So I was like, I can make my own design. That's not the stopper as me coming up with my own shape. So the next piece was the nickel couch, which came about 5 years later. You know, the kids were young. At the point of the nickel couch was made, they were 5 and 3. I mean, you know, the years from previous that 4 and 2, you know, 3 and 0. Those are crazy years in the house. There's not a lot of stuff going along besides. And I had a welding business. I had a mobile welding truck where I repaired heavy machinery. So when that first piece of the nickel couch was made, you know, it was really sort of the game changer. And like what you were saying when you saw the first piece, when that first piece was made, and it came out of the mold, it really looked like a dolphin surfacing out of the ocean. It was just, it glittered. And you know, there's nothing wrong with glitter. Who doesn't like glitter? That's why people sprinkle it on their faces. I mean, no one wants to admit they like glitter, but you know, we're all raccoons. We all like shiny objects, and you know, I'm making the ultimate shiny object. You know, so it's progressed from there, and you know, the work has gotten the attention that, you know, I'm so happy with the fact that people get to enjoy the work.
And people, the response has been so overwhelmingly positive, and people are, again, just really delighted. And you have also used other objects. You've used baby food jars, right? And you've made lights and bowls, and we could talk about the dollar bill as well.
Yeah. We could.
We could talk about the dollar bill.
I need a more pointed question to jump into that one. Sorry.
Well, you know, one of my questions actually is, you know, you've worked with all these different coins, every kind of different coin there is.
Even some foreign coins.
I was going to ask you about that. And also dollar bills. You have a rug made out of dollar bills and other objects.
The rug is like my most conceptual piece ever, which is, I mean, you're sitting on money, there's some good irony there, but walking on money, I have some great films of the rugs being in shows, and some people walk on it with vigor and you know, sort of just this guttural enthusiasm, and other people like put one foot on it, realize what it is, and like back
off,
and then other people just walk up to the edge and like just and then you know, move around it, and it's really interesting. And you know, people are like, you know, that can't be real money. I'm like, it's real money. Well, you know, and then you get back into the conversation whether you can do that or not, and that's a different conversation. But
it is
really, you know, there's that American flag aspect of you know, are you somehow making a statement about, you know, about the country itself? And it's like, you know, or that whole line of like, you know, stepping over dimes, you know, dollar bills to pick up dimes. You know, like there's just it's so, having a rug made out of $1,001 bills, for one, you know, I've had neighbors that say to me like, well, you know, why the hell would you do that? You know, that's in a sense you're wasting money.
That's right.
But it's one of my favorite pieces.
It's beautiful, and just give a shout out to the woman who sewed it together for you. Yeah.
Kathy Sprague, Mary Jane, and her daughter Ann Murphy. You know, just you can't thank the Renaults enough in Brattleboro. One way or another, you're gonna be thanking a Renault.
A lot of what you were talking about, you were living in the East Village at the time, and so. Is that correct?
I was living in Tribeca, working in East Village. My commute was across Houston Street every day and night, which I got very good at. You know, there's the Holland Tunnel traffic, which you have to figure out how to beat, and you know, it was beautiful.
I did that on a bike for 2 weeks once, taking a class there. It was quite amazing. It's a challenge. So you were living there. It was the 80s in New York City. Were you also working as a DJ during that time?
No. Okay. Nope. I did work at nightclubs. I have great nightclub stories.
I bet you do.
I'm not sure it's the right time or place for them. I was my workshop was on 2nd Street and Avenue B. It was a dirt floored shop. We heated it with a wood stove with just stuff we picked up on the street. The rent was $100 a month. It was sort of the Wild West. I mean, I have memories of one Sunday morning appropriating an I-beam from a job site and dragging it down the street with my Jeep and being chased down by a policeman on a horse.
Wow.
At 7:30 on a Sunday morning. And I look in my rearview mirror and I go to my buddy Linus and I'm like, I think we're being chased by a horse on a cop. And he's like, you know, you just can't, you know, if you put that in a film, no one would believe it.
That's right.
And you know, I pulled over, and you know, wasn't going very fast. I was literally peeling the asphalt up, towing this I-beam down the street. And he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And we explained that we were starting a sculpture garden in a lot on Rivington Street. And he said, I think he just sort of rolled his eyes and just didn't figure how is he going to write it up. You know how?
Right. And he's a New York City cop, so he was used to stories.
Yeah. Right. So he actually went on his way, and we did start the Rivington School with that I-beam.
You did?
Yeah.
And
it turned out I ended up becoming friends with a person whose building was being built with that I-beam, and he was very proud that the I-beam that was taken from his job site ended up starting the Rivington School.
That's so great. Yeah. Another great story. So Johnny, I'm going to try something that we haven't done before on the show, which is doing a lightning round. So I'm going to throw a few things out to you, and you can respond with a couple sentences and give us a picture of whatever that is. All right. So, Junkyard Wars.
It was an amazing experience. Probably the hardest I've worked 10 hours in one shot.
And this was on the Discovery Channel, I believe?
The Learning Channel.
And Learning Channel, and you were a team leader.
I was on the show 3 times. I won once, but
Was it fun?
It was fun. It was fun. It was fun because I like a challenge. It was fun because, you get over having a camera in your face after about 30 seconds
Yes,
of
right.
hard work, and
Yeah.
next thing you know, it's like, you're picking your nose and swearing like normal.
So it's like Project Runway, but for
Yes.
assembling things
Yeah.
and finding things and making things.
And really, to give credit to somebody in Brattleboro, for many years after that, people would be like, "Oh, I wish I would have loved to have done that with you."
Yeah.
And I'm always rolling my eyes, like, "No, I'm glad you weren't on my team." But Mike Renault in Brattleboro is the only person that's ever said it to me, where I was like, "Actually, you would have been really good on my team." Because you need positivity.
Yeah, right.
You need somebody that's got
Yeah.
enthusiasm.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to throw something else at you.
Yeah.
Animal husbandry.
They need it.
They're hard to find.
If like how we all play these games on our phones, and they've figured out from the games that you need success. The reason people keep playing the games is they get a little shot of. Every time I feed the animals or I go to care for them, I know they're happy. I know that I'm doing the right thing, and it's it's sort of like I start my day off knowing I've done one thing right so far, and.
And you kind of have a farm, a little farm.
I do have a little farm.
Yeah.
And the great thing about farming is just like life, things don't always go well. I mean, and you have to be forced to make hard decisions. I mean, some are, if you want to have, you harvest the animals in the fall, and that's a hard decision.
Yeah.
Or an animal's not healthy and you have to put it down, that's a hard decision. But generally it's all, it's beautiful. We had 3 lambs born 2 days ago, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah. Yeah. How about the Visual Artists' Rights Act?
It was an amazing time in my life where I was working on a project that ended up in federal court. And the most amazing thing about it was in 1993, art was being debated as to whether it was or wasn't art. And in my mind, Duchamp took care of that in 1914. But we had people testifying that what we were doing wasn't art, and some people testifying what we were making was art, and it ended up going. We won the federal case, but we lost in the Second Circuit. It really was a property rights issue, but the Visual Artists' Rights Act stands for just basically saying you cannot destroy, alter, or mutilate an artist's work in their lifetime, and it's a very important law. It was absorbed from French law. And
so you were one of the first artists to testify?
We were the first case. So the case law is Carter versus Helmsley Spear, but if you look further, and it's Carter Verona's swing against Helmsley Spear. And it just, I think, to be a part of a thing where people are talking publicly about what is art was amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, the judge was very animated, and I have lots of stories about him, and it was 4 or 5 days of trial, and then we ended up testifying in front of Congress, and it was
That's quite an experience.
It was, and it was just recently used in the 5 points thing. Our whole case law was what defined the 5 points case, where they actually won.
Yeah. Next subject, the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire.
A beautiful couple, really.
And they bought one of your pieces.
They bought actually 2 of my pieces, and invited me over for lunch, which it seemed like a lot of effort, but as my wife explained to me at the time, that's not something you miss. And so I didn't miss it, and took a train up there early on a Sunday morning, and the limousine picked me up at the train station. And as we drove in, I said, "Oh, this is a nice town. What is this town?" He goes, "Well, it's the town for the castle." And we're driving towards the castle. I'm like, "What are all these cars parked here for? Is there like a soccer match or something going?" It's like, "No, that's people visiting the castle." We got close to the castle, and there's all these big gates, and there's crowds of people. I'm like, "What are all the crowds for?" And they're like people that are going into the castle.
So it was on. The public was invited.
Right.
Yeah.
And and then like these gates that are like 30 feet on each side swing open, and we drive through them, and we drive to the back, and I go in, and the Duke showed me around his art collection, which was stupendous, and he had a very nice lunch, which I tried to eat all the food that I was served, and wasn't, like, "No, what's this? What's this?" and they riddled me with questions the whole time, and like trying not to eat with my mouth. And I'm like obviously starving, probably didn't have breakfast. But my favorite thing was we drove around the grounds, which is a sculpture garden, in a golf cart, the 2 of them, and I said to them, so how many people work for you guys? Because they're telling me about how they like 6,000 sheep, and they said, one of them said 600 people and the other said 800 people. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
I'm like going like, you have 800 people working for you, you're driving me around in a golf cart? They're like, it's pretty wonderful. So they were
great.
really, really sweet. And I'm very lucky to be in their collection because, I'm sort of the junkiest thing there.
Oh, I doubt that very much. And let's talk just a little bit about what you're working on now, the biomorphics pieces that you're doing.
It's a series of pieces that all fit together. There's 7 works. The trickiest thing for me to make is small work because if it's a chair, first it has to be a chair, and if it's small, then how do you expand beyond the physical being of where a person sits? But shape is really important to me, and things that take you beyond what just they are is important. So I'm really delighted with how successful each individual piece is, and the fact they all fit together to make one contiguous shape is really...
So they can stand alone, and this piece is about, what, 12 by something?
Yeah, it's about 11 by 7. And sort of like in a big egg shape. And I guess if the test is whether I like it, I like most things that I make, but that's when I'm done with them. But I'm really happy with how this piece has come out. It's sort of like I've been working on it for about 2.5 years.
Oh wow!
And it's been a mission.
What will it be made out of? Because when I was there, I saw the forms that are made that you make out of styrofoam.
Right. So I'm taking the machine and altering the coins to where they're flattened.
So it will be coins.
Right.
Yeah.
So like if it looked like it was like when you run them over with a train, or not you run them over, the train driver runs them over. But the coins have been altered to where they're not just circular shapes anymore. They're sort of organic shapes.
They're beautiful.
And that makes them a little bit more dynamic. Your eye has this ability to process shapes really clearly, and so a round shape, you just see round shapes and you move on. But these aren't round shapes; they're sort of more organic shapes, and so your eye gets caught on the things a little bit more. And also there's a little bit of a shadow image left of what was there. Coins are like little sculptures themselves.
Yes.
So it's almost like I've gone back to collaborating with the artist that made the coins, and I'm sort of altering his work or her work. There are many.
That's interesting. That could be another whole show right there. Johnny, could you hold up the piece that you brought in today? We're going to not be able to do the big pieces, but this will give folks an idea of what kind. So that's underneath. And I don't think we're going to be close enough to see the welds, and that's the inside. And those are all $half coins?
Nope, these are dollar coins.
Dollar coins, okay.
So really moving to Vermont has been one of the best things that ever happened to me. When I was in New York, I was really struggling to get by and just struggling to focus and struggling to have a workshop. And when I came to Vermont, I gained traction immediately. It's been it's been, as an artist, it's been fantastic.
That's so great. It's always good to hear that.
Yeah.
And this community in particular too, right?
I love Southern Vermont.
Yeah. Thank you,
Great
Johnny.
idea. Thank you,
This has been wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate
I've enjoyed it.
Good.
Thanks.
We had a good time. And thanks to all of you for being with us today. That was fun. Johnny Swing, he is around. You can see his furniture in various places in town, but also at the end of this show, we do have credits, so you will be able to tap in and see where he is showing his artwork. Thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you next week.